again, I'm not just referring to mobile phones or PCs, but devices that are all around us. As estimates put, enterprises and governments across the world roughly use and deploy 7.8 million devices. Now I'll just, this is a normal question that I ask in the interest of not taking much time, but this is a question that I ask whenever I present at an audience saying, which is the most expensive personal computer that each one of you owns? And your minds will now start ticking and you'll start thinking, I spent 50,000 rupees, a lakh and a half. But I can tell you, you probably bought a computer, a personal computer, not so far back in the past, or maybe even recently for some of you, that's far, far more expensive than what you mentally comes to your mind. So for example, if any one of you owns a car, which I'm assuming most of you do, that's also a personal computer. Most of the modern cars, even if you date them back to 10 years, have computing devices on board that essentially run the functions of the car, the engine, the performance, etc. And some of the high-end cars are far more even sophisticated. There was a recent report where a bunch of kids actually took control of a car, which is a connected car, and they actually drove it, so it's kind of scary, but just to give you a sense that devices are all around us, and they'll become more and more intelligent, and they'll have more ambient intelligence built with us. So while the mobile phone brought this revolution of making us interact with each other, and brought all of us closer to each other across the world, devices proliferation, or the Internet of Things, is essentially going to make us interact with devices and make devices interact with each other. So devices really driving this whole data explosion, where people are consuming applications on those devices that are essentially consuming data, and then the biggest part of that data is sitting in the cloud, and cloud is now running at hyperscale with multiple companies offering those capabilities, and it's real. I mean, this transformation, though it sort of happens fairly seamlessly over the course of the last 5 to 6 years, but if you really step back and think about it, it's really staggering. I'm sure if some of you have a conversation with your children and you talk about the world that some of us have seen 20 years back, they don't even believe that that kind of world ever existed. For them, they're just born, they're digital natives, they use data in and out, and this is the reality. And it's also changing the way companies are building their business models. One of the examples that I give is that every company in this century is both a data and a technology company. It doesn't matter what business you are in. And a good analogy of that is, if you get a chance, go onto YouTube and watch this presentation by this gentleman called Joseph Sirosh. He works for Microsoft. He's one of the most boring presenters that you'll ever find. He's not very inspiring. But you'll actually see his 20-minute presentation and you'll be mesmerized, not because of his delivery style, but by the fact that what he's talking about in that presentation. The presentation is called The Connected Cow, C-O-W. The presentation is about essentially a company based in Europe, which essentially has a poultry farm where they rear cattle for milk, cows for milk. And so obviously, if they're in the business of having cows, they need to make sure that they have high efficiencies in how the cows get produced, and more cows get produced. So they essentially are using data sciences and machine learning and a lot of Internet of Things. So the cows actually have pedometers installed on their feet, and they're able to figure out when the cow walks a lot more than normally, then they know that that's the right time for the cow to get impregnated, so that they can have the right reproductive cycles, and they can have really deep sciences behind it. So is it a poultry company? Is it a technology company? It's a data company? You'll be guessing at the end of the presentation. So that's the context of what we do at Microsoft. We have 3 big, bold ambitions, as our CEO Satya Nadella put out when he took over the role 1.5 years back. One is about this whole idea of personal computing. What does it really mean? This is not about the personal computer anymore. This is not about a mobile phone. This is about having the ability to build endpoints, which are devices that are connected to the cloud, that deliver services, that do endpoint computing, and devices of any kind, devices that exist today, and devices that have yet not been invented. And then how we are able to also make sure that your mobility is taken care of, not the mobility of your device, the mobility of your experience, and I'll touch a little bit more about that in just a second. The second part is building this whole intelligent cloud infrastructure that essentially powers the services that are running on those devices, not just our devices, but also devices that are running by our competitors that are running different platforms, but they get powered through the cloud platform that we run. And how do you bring things like machine learning, things like ambient intelligence that get delivered through the cloud? And the last one is about how do you really reinvent business productivity? A simple example of what the engineers who run this group would worry about. Like one of the most unproductive of tasks inside corporate offices or in government would be meetings. Right? You get into a meeting, you're a bunch of people, we discuss stuff, we take down notes, and eventually when you follow up, it's a very, very tedious task. And it's a very time-consuming, painstaking task, but nobody has really figured out how to run more efficient meetings and how do you run more productive meetings. So people sitting in this group would essentially focus on things like those. How do we make meetings more efficient, for example? So we do a lot of work in that space and build our cloud technology that support the whole idea of business productivity and business processes. So let me delve a little bit more on personal computing. So one of the things that we believe is what's going to differentiate us from anybody else is this whole idea of mobility of your experience. All of us have multiple devices. I touched upon the fact that we have devices that we don't even recognize them as devices, and we'll have more and more devices in our life than we would like to, but that's the reality. Your refrigerator is going to be a device, your microwave is going to be a device, and since we are here talking about railways, a lot of times when we'll travel, a lot of those things will also be devices in itself that you'll be interacting with, that will be interacting with devices with you and will be interacting with you as well. And what's really going to be the core of this is the mobility of your experience. So for example, if I'm on my phone and I know I've looked for a place on my map and then I get to my car seamlessly understands that I am going to be driving now, and the whole map experience shifts to my car, and that's just the reality that's going to happen in the course of the next few years. And that's the idea, that the experience to me will be served in the context of where I am, in the device that is next to me, and not just disconnected experiences that will run across different devices. The second thing is, it's just impossible to assume that mankind is going to interact with devices in only one way, which is the keyboard or touch. You're obviously going to have a lot more different and intelligent and more natural user interfaces. Voice, touch, ink are the natural ways that human beings communicate with each other, and you'll see that happening more and more with devices as well. And then how do you really build this whole capabilities around modern devices that really drive that innovation, and also be able to build an engineering cycle that is driven on this constant innovation, because the change that we see in technology that's happening over the course of the last 10 years is far more rapid than it ever happened in the course of the last 100 years or so. And so we built this whole technology around our personal computing endeavor, which is Windows 10. We launched it 6 months back, 7 months back globally. It's what we call as the last version of Windows ever in the shape it will be. It runs like a service. It's built to be extendable. It's the same operating system that runs on the smallest Internet of Things device. It's the same operating system that runs on some of the more fancier devices that I'll probably be able to show you a small video around, and also runs on the PCs and the phones and everything else, and also runs capabilities that runs cross-platforms on other devices. So it's extendable and allows some of the services to even run on Android and iOS platforms as well. So we needed to build an operating system that has the legs to build the devices that exist today, and then also invent devices that are going to come in the near term in the future. So this is an example of what we're driving as local innovation using the Windows platform. This is a device that we built with a local partner called Data Mini. A great example can be used in the Indian Railways, where TTs can be carrying this device. It's a fairly mobile device. It's a 7-inch device. Obviously, it has applications across various other scenarios in the government space and in the enterprise space. It has a magnetic card reader. It has a fingerprint scanner. It has a barcode reader. It has a smart card reader, and all those things can be removed and made optional depending on the cost structure that you're looking for. But far more than that, this is an enterprise-grade solution. So it runs using Windows 10 and uses our cloud technology to essentially manage the device. If the device is not functioning properly, you can actually remotely wipe, remotely re-image the device, and you can really control the entire experience from the back end. And you can even, because you're using a technology called Windows Hello that we made possible in Windows 10 that uses fingerprinting and biometrics to even log into applications, this is enterprise grade security. So it's not just one of those cheap devices that you'll just buy and give to people, but essentially a full enterprise grade solution that runs the back end, but developed and designed by a local company under the Make in India program. Another great technology that we built and you can see this outside in the display area when you actually step out for lunch, is this phone that I have, which is a Microsoft phone called the Lumia 950 XL. This is just the beginning of what we can potentially do with technology. So this is a tech called Continuum for Phones. So when I talked about this whole idea of mobility of your experience, this phone is the singular device that I can carry. I don't even need to carry a PC if I don't want to. If I just connect it to a monitor and a screen, it becomes a full PC. So I can actually use Excel in full mode. I can use Office in full mode as using a concept that we built called universal applications. So I get the full functional capability of a desktop. So what the technology is doing is using the computing power of your phone. These days phones are far more powerful than what even PCs used to be a few years back. You have 4 gig RAMs on your phone and you have 6 gig RAMs also coming in, and then quad-core and octa-core processors. And you're using the computing power of the phone while the phone is still operational. So you can actually take calls while you're using the whole PC experience as well. So this is another example. Great applications in deskless workers. So you could just have a phone, full enterprise grade security. You can delineate their personal and professional data, walk into the office, hook it to your monitor, and you can even do space saving, because if you are running different shifts, then you don't need to have a device resident there, just dumb monitors and keyboards. And people just walk in with their phones and hook it up and start working just the way they would do on a PC. And when they go back, they take their phone back. Full enterprise grade security, bit locker, and all the capabilities that you would expect from a PC, you'd get on the phone as well. This is another device which is very close to my heart, and we just launched this in India 5 weeks back, and this is also available for display outside. When about 4 years back, Microsoft decided to be in the hardware business, though we technically have been in the hardware business for about 15 years building the Xbox, but that was predominantly in the consumer space, in the gaming area. But we decided that we want to be in the hardware space because we felt that we can bring innovation that our partners weren't able to do. So we built this whole idea of building the next generation of PCs, what they would look like. And the Surface, and starting from the 3rd generation, the Surface Pro 3 and the Surface Pro 4 have been received with a lot of accolades from all customers across the world. And this is an enterprise grade device. Consumers love it. They buy it at home. This is truly a laptop, tablet that can literally replace your laptop. I just want to run this video. I don't know. Can you run the audio, please? Audio. funny anecdote is whenever I go to any office where they make you sign the laptops and put the serial numbers because for security purposes, I get lots of questions. So I've been giving a lot of demos to security guards because they ask me, what is this? This is a laptop or a tablet? So that's part of my job every day these days. This is very unusual for Microsoft to be in this business, and we are whole soul in this business. We have all of us know that Microsoft is a world-class software and cloud company, but very few people know right now that we have a 100,000 square feet prototyping facility in our corporate office in Redmond, where we are essentially building the next generation of devices and technology and huge amount of hardware capabilities. The Surface Pro 4 is 30% faster than the previous generation, uses the Intel 6th generation Skylake processors. It's 60% faster than the MacBook, and we build different kinds of devices with up to RAM, about 16 GB RAM in different configurations. One of the most amazing part of this device, and you get to experience it as you step outside and see this, is the fact that this is a marvel of engineering because you're able to fit a Core i5 and an i7 processor into this thickness, which is 8.4 mm, and with still have a full functional USB 3.0 port. That meant for Microsoft to essentially re-engineer almost every single thing inside the Surface product. So you get the chip from Intel, but every single thing that you see inside the Surface is built by Microsoft with patents from Microsoft. So we had to build the heat sink, because one of the biggest challenges when you bring the size down is heating. And so we had to build the thermal engineering to make this happen. We had to literally build the cameras that are inside it, so it uses 3D and infrared cameras because it uses a technology called Windows Hello that allows me to sign in into the device using facial recognition versus using passwords. Because most of us forget passwords or put very simple passwords that other people can hack into. So it uses the most highest grade of biometrics to sign in into these devices. It also, I talked about the fact it's fairly light at 786 grams without the keyboard. And the keyboard itself just weighs a couple, 200 or 300 grams, and it's fairly lightweight. When you carry it, you'll realize that it's a really lightweight, like a tablet. It's a full functional keyboard with a glass trackpad, so you can type like just the way you type on a laptop, and you will not feel the difference. In fact, it just takes a few seconds for you to get used to it, and you'll realize that you were missing a great experience when you're using your regular laptop before you start using the Surface. This is the most amazing part of Surface, which is, I spoke about the fact about these natural user interfaces. All of you must have always experienced using a stylus on a phone, if you use some of the Samsung Galaxy Note phones. But you use that for a few days and then you get bored of it because it's not very natural. So one of the biggest challenges to make ink work on digital devices is the fact that you need to make it feel like the way you're writing on a piece of paper. So the Surface is built in the form factor of a 3x2, which is exactly like the way you would normally write on a Longscape notebook. So when I walk into a meeting, I detach it from the keyboard, I write on it. We use a palm blocking technology, so you can put your hand, rest it on the device, and use the pen. When you hold the pen, it's a full functional pen. It feels like a pen, holds like a pen. And the beauty of this is, and that's where the technology comes to the fore, is that when you put the nib on the glass, because the glass is the Gorilla Glass and then the LED screen has a few microns of depth, the gap will be essentially the ink that is falling on the glass, and your eye will know that there is a parallax. So the beauty of this device is that when you put the pen on the glass and the ink falls exactly where your nib is, just the way when you do it when you write on paper, with pen and paper. And so you try this out and you'll realize how magical this device is. So you take notes on this device, it'll be available to you, syncs on the cloud, and works on any device outside. So I take notes on it, I can access it on my Android device or on my iPhone as well, because we use those applications that run cross-platform, across clouds. And this is the versatility of the device. There's so many customers who are running it. And before I end, I want to leave you with this one simple video about this new technology that we built using, again, Windows 10. This is right now in beta. It is available as a developer kit for people to build applications on it, but this is really what the future of technology that we enable with capabilities like Windows 10. You've got, this is called the HoloLens. I hope, maybe some of you might have seen it, but this is really an interesting piece of technology from Microsoft that's now out as a developer capability, but we'll see it in market in the next few weeks and months.
Technology is all around us. We use it in every aspect of our lives. It enables us to do amazing things. But what if we could go further? What if we could go beyond the screen? Where your digital world is blended with your real world. Now we can. This is the world with holograms. What will they enable us to do? New ways to visualize our work.
I have an idea for the fuel tank.
New ways to share ideas with each other.
How are things going your end?
I just put the images in OneDrive.
Perfect.
More immersive ways to play. New ways to teach and learn.
So put the new trap in the place of the old one,
Now what?
and tighten here and here.
New ways to collaborate and explore the places we've never been.
Look at this formation. Let's take a closer look.
And new ways to create the things we imagine.